You've seen the headlines, but we
Why would Facebook want to gatekeep?
dig deeper.
If you want to keep individuals harmless by this, wages would have to go up by the exact same amount as prices.
Featuring experts from the University of Toledo.
I think there are two things that probably worry me the most about Afghanistan.
It's Rocket Talk.
The holidays are here, and if your experience is anything like mine, it seems like everyone is telling you to get your presents early this year because you might have trouble finding what you need if you wait. Difficulty in finding items is not limited to gifts, but to many of the everyday items we take for granted. Grocery store aisles are missing staples, car dealership inventory is plummeted, and many restaurants can't find the necessary ingredients to fill out their menu. Here to talk about the supply chain challenges we're currently facing are Drs. Hao-wei Chen and Shaun from the Neff College of Business and Innovation. So I think a lot of us have a sense that the supply chain challenges we're facing are related to COVID, but maybe don't know exactly how those two intersect. Can you just kind of put in perspective for us how COVID has affected the supply chain?
Sure, I would like to take this question. The COVID-19 pandemic for sure has posted significant challenges for the supply chain globally. So let's first look at the supply side. A supply chain means it consists of multiple firms or companies on different levels who will supply each other. And the basic function of supply chain means that they have to make sure the products can flow smoothly in this network to satisfy the needs of the customers. But the pandemic actually causes almost disruptions in every single part of the supply chain. For example, the plants or factories won't produce any products, and the delivery companies, they cannot have enough capacity or workforce to deliver the products from one spot to the other one. So that's what's happening on the supply side. But let's look at the other side of the story, the demand side. There are two categories of impacts of pandemic on demand. The first one is demand increases. The other one is demand decreases. Demand increases in most life sciences sector or other sector, for example, like toilet papers or canned foods. But in almost the other sectors of industries, you can see demand go down. So in either of these two cases, the companies lack of the capability of being more adaptive to the two patterns of demand change.
Yeah. Oh, great. And I think what some of us might find confusing is that it seems like other metrics of our economy seem to be doing well. So for example, the stock market's at an all-time high, unemployment is relatively low. So why are these areas of the economy doing well while the supply chain seems to be struggling? And what does this disconnect tell us about the supply chain or our economy?
I wouldn't say there's a disconnection between those metrics, because if we talk about the stock market or even the unemployment rate, usually those metrics are more sensitive to the current situations. For example, when we have the vaccine, the stock price will goes up, and when there's a new mutation, the price will goes down. Okay. Similarly, when there is a huge labor demand, the unemployment rate will drop, right? So I would say that those metrics tell us that things are going to a better directions, but that will not reflect to the supply chain we have immediately, because remember, we lose almost 1 year and we still need to catch up all the time we lose. The cargo ship is still outside of the Pacific, and we still need to unload them, and we still need to fulfill those demands that we are not able to fulfill in the past year. So that would be the things that we need to catch up. Also, if we talk about the unemployment rate, it actually tells us what happens we have now, because we know the unemployment rate is lower, but at the same time, the labor force participation rate is also lower. This means that we don't have that many people who are looking for a job or who are currently working, and that explains the labor shortage we have. And we need labor for everything, for the manufacturing, for the logistics, and even for the retail store. And if we cannot build up the labor force, it will be slower for us to recover.
I think that's interesting, kind of talking about the different ways that this might intersect with there. And I think I'm also wondering, it's easy for us to see as consumers that sometimes the things we need aren't always available to us. Are there other ways that the supply chain challenges might affect consumers or employees in general?
Sure. We can see the consumers will suffer first from the scarcity of the products on the shelf, right? But that's not absolutely not the only thing. The consumer will also suffer from the price increases,
Oh, so
and also
inflation.
very late, inflation, and also the late delivery. And actually, when people try to buy something, they find it took so long time for them to receive the products. They will decide not to buy this, right? And actually, according to the study conducted by McKinsey, there's something happening in the consumer behavior. There's some significant changes also over there too. So, for example, because the people's primary concern is still the safety, the fear for infection. So they may mainly choose to use online shopping way, right? Which is very different from before, right? Because they will spend most of the time at home, they will work from home. The second change happens in the products they will purchase. For example, people will most likely to buy the essential, so-called essential goods, which means the necessity goods, the products. The stuff they will need for basic living, right? And they will not likely to purchase any products which satisfy the actual needs. So that's the second change. Finally, we can also see that the consumers become more eco-friendly because they more care about health. They will more focus on the health. They will more focus on the products which can have a higher sustainability level. Yeah, so those are main changes also happening in the consumer behavior. Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering also, because you're talking about changes in consumer behavior, what are changes that are happening in businesses in response to this, right? How have any industries been particularly successful in tackling some of these supply chain challenges?
If we go back to check the issues we have now, we have labor shortage, we have inflations, and we have the logistics capacity issue or the manufacturing capacity issues. So long as your supply chain or your company is affected by any of those factors, the recovery time will be longer. But there are some industries that are less affected by those. For example, if we talk about the high technology firm, or if you are producing an item such as the digital service, then or you can adapt to the new working environment to allow the worker work at home without much interruptions, then you will be less likely to be affected by this new trend. So I would say, high-tech firm, as long as you are working digitally, provide digital services, then less likely you'll be damaged by this.
Is this a situation you think where it's like a stress test for the supply chain where we come out healthier on the other side because we've identified where some of the problems are?
Yeah.
And what do you think this tells us just about our supply chain health in general?
Well, that's a good question. I would like to share some of my own opinions and ideas. So people would like to use some keywords to describe a good supply chain network. For example, profitable, beneficial, cost saving, right? But in the pandemic, people suddenly realized that when facing a COVID-19, this kind of disaster, this so-called as the efficient supply chain become very fragile, right? Because there are so many breakdowns right now. So that leads people to think about what's the real definition of good supply chain. And in my own opinion, a good supply chain means this supply chain network is complete. And specifically, when firms trying to make any supply chain strategy, they not only need to focus on how cost saving the strategy is and how beneficial it is, but also they need to worry about the risk, okay? How much risk the firm has to bear in the future, and how much, or in other words, how much risk reduction they can achieve by using this strategy. So firms realize that they have to switch from so-called just-in-time to just-in-case to face more risk they potentially will face in the future. All right. So the thing is, the firm has to do right now is they have to, from this kind of trade-off, they have to consider both two sides, benefits and the risk, and figure out what is the best balance point in this trade-off. And I would say that's the biggest lesson firms will learn from this pandemic.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I believe the risk management become much more important to the firms, but at the same time, it may be harder for them to deal with another pandemic again because it is different from other interruptions. For other interruptions, maybe only a small part of the supply chain is breaking down. so we can fix that relatively quick.
Yeah.
But when the whole supply chain is breaking down, and obviously for any firm, we don't have control of any single part of our supply chain, and that could still be very difficult. So I believe right now the firm might have different strategy to deal with different kind of scenarios, such that, for example, how to protect their infrastructures, how to protect their labor force when things like this happen again. That become much more important.
Yeah.
Well, sure. Well, we have 30 seconds left here, just real quickly. Do you think things are going to get worse before they get better, or are we? Is this the new norm?
Well, I would say the common answer to a question like this is it depends, right? It depends how serious the pandemic will be in the future, how effective and efficient the vaccination will be in the future. But I believe, that's my own opinion, if firms can be aware of the innovations or changes they have to make, as we just talked about, and things will not get too much worse.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah.
I want to thank both of our guests today. Thank you both for joining us, and join us next time for more Rocket Talk.